All right. Tell me you're joking time. You've read your dashboard. The state Senate candidate. It's already a rough morning, people. Tuesday, not enough coffee. Mr. Steve Butz will be joining me in just 2 seconds here. But prior to coming on the air, we were chit-chatting, trying to put a little pin in the map, and come to find out, Mr. Butz has a passion for the blues, which inspired me to dig not too deep, to play a little tune of a couple brothers, friends of mine, South City guys, the Manis Brothers. Go check them out. They're at Venice. They're off-Broadway often, whatever. But these guys are awesome. So you like a little St. Louis blues, modern St. Louis blues, go check them out. First things first, thank you for listening. Really appreciate all the support. Like, review, follow, share. All those things are free. I've said it before. It's kind of annoying. It's a dumb cliche, but I have low self-esteem. So when you do those things, those little clicks, it actually makes my day better. That's my sympathy wish there. Tell me you're joking. We are in election season. So if you are in the weeds or wondering what's going on with candidates, amendments, races, all of the above, I'm much more palatable than Gutfeld. So be following us, because I got some names coming up here that you're going to be like, really interesting. Let's listen. Trust me on that one. So we are in the middle of summer, coming up right around the corner. At the time of this recording, we will have the Missouri primaries on August 4th. Today's date, just so everybody gets a frame of reference, is July 14th. In Missouri, the primary is becoming an extreme battleground for a number of reasons, not only the traditional races themselves within the parties, from state level rep to Senate to federal races as well. The primary is going to have a lot of individual items on there, ballot initiatives, amendments, etc. That, well, we'll get into why they're on the primary here in a little bit, but we're going to talk about all that today. So joining me today, as I already stated, is from the South Side, an OG South Sider, Mr. Steve Butz. How's it going, Steve?
It's going good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So first things first, let's hard-hitting questions out of the way. Manis Brothers, did you ever hear of them? Have you heard of them?
I haven't. We were just talking about, my buddies that are in the Kingdom Brothers. Yeah, obviously these two groups of brothers know each other if they're playing the blues in St. Louis.
There you go. Well, these two, I think they originally grew up way out on the wrong side of the wrong river out in St. Chuck County, but found their way to the South Side over in Cherokee, and it's two-piece drums, guitar. A lot of noise, lot of they call it the Mississippi Delta, kind of the dirty blues.
Yeah, okay.
So you have to check them out.
I will check them out for sure. I love live music in St. Louis.
So let's kind of put a little bit of a profile around the name for the listener, and then we'll immediately kind of get into your race, your district, and some of the key areas. Crawford Butz Insurance Company. Let's start there. That's the day job, right?
That is the day job. It's the engine that pulls the train. So in 1961, a guy named Gene Crawford and my dad, Norbert Butz, started an insurance agency, literally going door to door selling insurance policies, small little renters policies. And my dad wound up having 11 kids, so he had to sell a lot of insurance. And it's kind of been in my blood since obviously I was a kid. And this is our agency's 65th year. And we've grown from my dad knocking doors to about 30 employees in St. Louis. And our footprint is really the Midwest. So about an 8-state footprint.
So, okay. You're a Southsider, as I just mentioned.
I am.
Give us the cross streets, give us the parish, give us the usual, the St. Louis standards. What parish, what high school, give us the lowdown.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. So St. Stephen's on the south side on Wilmington, a little landlocked parish that was small even when I was a kid. That's where I went to grade school. that school is still open and functioning well, kind of amazing. A lot of thanks to a lot of people for that. But then Bishop DeBerg, which is where I met my wife, who was from originally Our Lady of Sorrows. So, I mean, we're really South Side.
Yeah.
Those roots go deep, deep, deep. We tried to move to Columbia, Illinois about 30 years ago, and that only lasted for about 60 days. And we moved back into our house that we lived in on Belle Rive.
So then the ultimate Southsider question, your preferred sandwich shop.
Oh, Joya's Deli with the hot salami.
See, this is going to be
mean,
an easy one because my
that's
wife's
for sure.
family was Amaghetti's family.
And the original Amaghetti's, I would have probably said that. But
I was okay with it until the microwave was invented, and then brought along for their hot sandwiches. I'm like, no.
Amaghetti's is still good. We've got a daughter that lives on the hill. I love dining on the hill, but no. Joya's hot salami.
Hot salami
Nothing
beef.
is close.
Do you do the salami and
No,
beef?
I just do the salami.
Hot salami.
Yeah, with a lot of mustard.
Yeah, it deserved a James Beard award
For sure.
So then, one of the things I found interesting, talk briefly. Eaglehurst Ranch. What is that? What is that?
Okay, Eaglehurst Ranch is a family resort on the Hoosier River. Just had some substantial flooding in that area in the news just this week, actually. So it is a resort that was open to the public since the end of World War II. My family has been going there since I was a little kid, and about 25 years ago, an opportunity came up for myself and my wife and my brother and sister-in-law from Rolla, Missouri, and our parents, and we bought the resort. And I have a kid sister. I'm the oldest of 11, and my youngest sister, Anne, and her husband, Luke, were looking for a change to move from Seattle area. And they moved to Steelville, Missouri. That's where it's located, right on the Hoosier. So picture an old school family camp, 30 cabins, horseback rides. I call square dances, for example.
You call them yourself?
I do.
Nice.
Well, as a rock and roll guy from the 70s, I wanted to hire square dance callers, 3-4 times summer. It was getting harder and harder to do, and I thought, I've been a lead singer in a band for a long time. How hard can it be? And I loved square dancing. So all I did was got some YouTube videos, memorize the calls, and then you start to just wing it.
So do you have auctioneering in your near future then?
I mess with auctioneering a little bit because, you do a few charity galas, and I like to kick it up just a little notch there. But no, I have enough side hustles. If I have any more, my wife is going to be very angry with me. But so anyway, I've always loved horses, always loved the outdoors. It's a family-centered place. And in 2020, because of the pandemic, we had to close to the public. And in our large family, it's worked out better as a private family camp now, and that's what it is. There's about 24 families that pitch together and pay for the caretaker and the upkeep and the insurance and the taxes and the horses.
So the floods here just the other day, was your resort affected? Were you guys high enough ground?
Yeah, fortunately, we're high enough. Some near neighbors, the one lady that did drown in the Hoosier is just about 2.5 miles from our place. Now, that was just devastating. We are high enough up that we weren't directly affected. Our dock that's down on the river, that sustained some damage and some lower pasture, but we have nothing to complain about. You lose power, though, for a good length of time, but places like Black River Lodge, it was bad in Steelville, but Lesterville was the ground zero of this event.
Yeah. Be interesting to see how quick, when that is addressed, kind of at the state macro level, because if recent history serves as a reference point, i.e. the tornado and how what is happening. Right. I get it. It's two completely different districts and there's two different local entities in charge, but at the end of the day, it's Jeff City. Jeff City has, the ability to do it. Obviously, you're on the inside. Are those phone calls happening faster with in the aftermath of the flooding?
In Missouri, for the tornado, let's start with that. The governor reacted quickly. There was a lot of boots on the ground right away. The state has done a nice job of getting some money, but it's FEMA really that has really slowed this situation down and hurt us bad in St. Louis. It's not going to be near as quick, I don't believe. In this area, there's just a much smaller area that's affected. It's devastating where it was in Lesterville, but I didn't see the same output, certainly from the state level, that we did.
So, okay, let's, like I said, I have rails. They're quote guardrails, but they're awfully wide. Let's take 2 seconds just to kind of touch on what you alluded to, the tornado. Jeff City's response is what it is. We all know that the billions, plural, that were needed have not come. Historically, that is a FEMA activity, funding mechanism. That's what it's there for. Can you take a second and speak to, Missouri? Missouri is a Republican. Missouri is a MAGA state for the most part. Mm-hmm. Okay. We clearly have a MAGA executive, including FEMA at this point. Why do you think the relationship between the two has not resulted in a response adequate enough to address the damage?
Directly, that complete blame is at the foot of Donald Trump. Donald Trump has gutted FEMA. I don't think he sees the importance of it, and he has used FEMA as a weapon against some states, of course, that are more blue states. How, we're not in that category. You would have thought that our MAGA connections would have improved the FEMA response here, and that was just not true.
Do you think there's a little bit of Jeff City being punitive as well by not being as vocal or fighting harder, because it is a blue city? It is a blue district that was whacked. And if if we're being honest with ourselves and you sit back as an innocent observer that reads a lot, or maybe understands kind of the political trade winds, you can see that as natural events have occurred across the country between blue states, red states, and specifically red rural areas versus maybe a blue dot in a red state, i.e. what happened here, you're not seeing a lot of state, you don't hear the state being vocal against FEMA and the Trump administration for a lack of action.
Yeah, most definitely not. Of course, they're all afraid of Trump. I think that's the biggest single problem. As I said, it would be unfair to categorize Governor Keogh's response to the tornado as anything except genuine, certainly in the beginning. This was always going to be a long process. He was here that next morning in person, and I do know at the city level, the state has given the city of St. Louis, without much encumbrance on how they spend the money, $190 million on this restoration. If you compare it to what happened in Joplin, which is at least, I'm going to say 15 years ago, but that was a 10-year rebuild in Joplin. There's no quick recovery. I think early on when there's a tremendous disaster, there's that big outpouring of sympathy and hard work, and we got to pull together. But after a year or so, it gets down to the nuts and bolts, and you see the immensity of that task. I was just in North St. Louis. It still exists. It's unbelievable how many buildings need to be torn down and rebuilt.
Yeah, we could have a whole episode on this, and I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too far. It's just, suffice to say, the brain-body disconnect between the powers that be within, St. Louis County because part of the tornado damage was also St. Louis County. But the clear and evident destruction that's, within the city, within predominantly an African American community.
Correct.
The truth is kind of right in front of our eyes. They're not getting the help because the estimated damage was $7 to $8 billion.
Right.
190 million.
Not even a drop in the bucket. I get it.
So yeah. Anyway, we won't. Maybe we revisit that later. But
okay.
Let's take a right turn and maybe create a little bit of a template here that we can work through as it pertains to your race and policies, et cetera. The Democratic Party nationally, one of those little kitschy statements, descriptors is it's a big tent party. Mm-hmm. Your district, the district that you're running in, this crossed my mind this morning as I was kind of semi-prepping. It doesn't get any more big tent from a varying degree of demos that are represented within the district you're running for. When you talk about West St. Louis City, through Shrewsbury, Maplewood, Richmond Heights, Rock Hill, Clayton, Warson Woods, you have 700 square foot, one bed, one bath shacks to Clayton and Warson Woods, in which you can have easily, 10,000 square foot mansions.
Right.
And everything in between, and the politics of the city, and the nuance of the county, and the fiefdoms, and everything else. Can you take a second and speak to, when you hear Big Tent Party and the Democrats, can you speak to that generically, and then give us kind of maybe a 101 on the district that you're running for?
Yeah, when you say big tent, I'm like, I want, as a Democrat, I want anyone and everyone whose first priority is to help people, and most especially working class people. To me, that is the number one job that I believe I have as an elected Democrat in Jefferson City and from the city of St. Louis. As long as we have that as a base, I think we can work together on any other issue that comes up, and I appreciate that about our party. Locally, I have always lived in St. Louis and done business, obviously, in St. Louis City, St. Louis County. Yeah, I mean, it is diverse. This district is very diverse in portion, I think, because we have, in the past, we've been very siloed, maybe in our thinking, especially in the city. And we could afford to do that when there was 700,000 or 600,000 people in the city. When we get down to 275,000, that siloing no longer works. And we are forced to look beyond, I just live on the hill, or I'm from St. Ambrose, or I'm in, St. Louis Hills or Dutchtown, whatever it is. We have to look and say, we are the city of St. Louis, and have to work together for our problems, because they're no longer isolated in just a handful of neighborhoods. That's not true. So, and I think that the inner core suburbs that make up the Senate 4 district also see that. Every time, last night I was in Shrewsbury, a couple days ago I was in Clayton. I'm spending obviously a good portion of my time in St. Louis County. About 40% of this district is in the county. And that being said, they also see that we're in this together, that the city's welfare is going to direct the welfare and the future of our region.
Yeah, look, you're preaching to the choir there on that one. City county merger, period. Let's take a second and address that, because it's kind of what you're alluding. That is the macro topic when you start to talk about the munis and their relationship to one another, specifically as it pertains to the city of St. Louis. For me, I wrote an article recently. I actually put it on my LinkedIn page. I don't care at this point. I would rather make a decision to do it, and let's fix it in reverse, as opposed to continually avoid it. And our trajectory is what it is. We now have 3-4 generations of watching the population go from a peak of 950 or whatever it was within the city. But then if you look broadly at the city county total number, we're flatlined.
Right, we are.
What's your position? What's your outlook? What's your take on and we don't need to get into operational specificity, but city county merger, pro or against?
Merger, I'm going to say I'm against, depending how you define the term merger. Do I think that it's in the region's long-term interest that the city of St. Louis could re-enter and undo the Great Divorce of 1876 and just re-enter St. Louis County as a municipality? I think that's a workable solution, but we're still a long way from that. That's just idle speculation, I believe. We've got to get to where we can work together, and we've got some key things right now. So I'm going to pick on the airport. There is no larger asset we have of a city-owned facility in the county. I'm sure that's unique to any place else. But for that cooperation between the city, the county, the state, and the federal government for the rebuilding of that airport, I don't think there's a bigger issue facing the St. Louis region over the next 5 to 10 years. We still fail to cooperate on the most simple of areas that we could work together for. I'll pick the 911 call center that you recall maybe 5 years ago. We knew, 911 wasn't getting answered in St. Louis City, all kinds of issues there. Yet we wind up still where we're going to build 2, quote unquote, state-of-the-art 911 call centers, one for the city, one for the county. I just felt like if we can't even come together and pick a call center in the middle of the 314 area code.
Yeah, I think that's exactly why I'm of the mindset I don't care at this point, merge. Because clouds and crime, for example, don't look at city-muni borders.
No, they don't.
Economies of scale. Like, there's nothing about the separation from economic development, from crime management, to facility infrastructure, to eliminating duplicity in government, right? Take your pick. You're in the insurance industry. The number one rule of thumb in insurance is the larger your pool of people, the lower your exposed risk is.
Correct.
So we're looking at just a simple shift in numbers management. Crime would drop, numbers statistically. The insurance that is being spent, theoretically, you have a larger pool. You have a better modeling to go after. You would see savings there. The issue of crime, in particular, when you're looking at the shortage of police officers, et cetera, it'd be a little bit easier to manage the police officer headcount, wages, benefits, et cetera. Again, pull a bigger number because you have a lot. I live in Webster. I see what happens in Glendale. I see what happens in, oh my gosh, what is the small one between Kirkwood and Webster? I'm even drawing a blank here.
Rock Hill, very close.
Yeah, these micro munis in which you have extensively funded first responder services, i.e. police and fire, et cetera. There's savings to be had. There's expansion. There's crossover that you could make work. Because this is what I'm describing in corporate America, that's called M&A.
Right.
And that's how we become efficient. So why is it not ringing true other than because it seems as if, well, this is just maintain power?
Well, I think you're not giving enough credit to the inevitability of human nature. So we mentioned Broadway shows. We were off the air before we're coming. I'm going to say, to quote a line from Hamilton, "You don't have the votes." There are not the votes to do that.
Well, I'm not.
Extensive a plan.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the political viability. I'm talking about the common sense analysis. If you look at this, like if you brought in somebody that was an absolute pro at mergers and acquisitions, specifically from a municipality standpoint, and how do you make your city region more efficient? If we hired somebody from the outside to come here, you know exactly where they would start. It would be in those areas.
They might. I don't even know if such a person exists, right? This is speculative and over my pay grade, but I will say, when I said human nature being what it is, this is my experience. When you have a stagnant population or shrinking populations, whether you're talking SLPS schools or Catholic parishes or anything else, when it is time to join together and downsize and try to, right size is probably a better term. Most people, I think their human nature is to circle the wagons and make sure they hang on to what they have. So that's a big factor that we have to overcome. If we could have, I just think we need certainly the corporate leadership would be a place to start, and an ever improving, and I'm being a cockeyed optimist since I just saw South Pacific at the Muni, an ever improving bench of political leaders that bring competency and common sense to the job.
So how do you
don't have enough of that?
Well, how do you propose that? Because Missouri has become kind of a microcosm, I think, in the worst possible opposite sense than what we were 25, 30, 35 years ago. Go back in time, it was a bellwether. Real simple.
We were.
We were purple through and through, and rode that line. Then there was the Obama election, and that was the first time in X amount of years that we did not fall in line with the winner.
The winner. Mm-hmm.
And it's gone way far away from that. As far as like, if we define bellwether as independent, hey, we're just going to make the right decision, not a political decision. We're past that. So within the state of Missouri, as you running for this Senate 4 district, and you look at the structure of Jeff City, the color palette per se, the MAGA influence within the party, from the governor's office all the way through, and then you look at the economic engines for Missouri, which are clear-cut blue.
Right.
Again, step on that pulpit for a second and just kind of give a State of the Union as to, you're talking about wanting to bring in more common sense, a better bench, et cetera. Well, what does that even look like when we have those that are in power completely being dismissive of anybody near a blue ticket?
Well, I'm going to say that, and I've been wrong about the electability of Donald Trump for a good number of years now. I think we're in this. I know some people say he hit a nerve. I'm going to say that there is a unique, in my opinion, cult of personality that surrounds the man. And until he is no longer in the picture politically at all and has gone on to his eternal reward, as we all will at a certain age, I don't know that we have a chance to bring that back. There is a absolute cult of personality that surrounds Donald Trump. I see it in Jefferson City all the time. People that I would think would otherwise.
Yeah, let me ask you just a personal question then, because I told you before we came on, I grew up in Granite City, Union Steel Town.
Yep.
32,000 people at the time. Now it's down to 24. So percentage-wise, doing exactly what St. Louis is doing. It's shrinking and stalling out. But more importantly, here's where I want to go with this. When I grew up, public school was the only option. The quote middle class was middle class for Granite City, but nationally speaking, it was probably low middle.
Yeah.
You had probably 1 in 4 households were directly tied to the steel mill, i.e. like an AB or something here in the city of St. Louis. And there was a kind of a middle ground mindset of it was a Democratic city, but it was conservative. I joked earlier about Dixiecrat, right?
Right.
And here's where I'm at. I want to get your opinion on this. I grew up with all of these people that were raised in that environment, that were pro-union households, that were maybe needed some help on food stamps at one point, or maybe Medicare, Medicaid, whatever. Some thrived, public schools, all these things. We all grew up in the same place and were raised by the same people, and now there was a massive swing to the right under MAGA that, you have a steel town now that is regularly voting for right to work. Right? But then whenever I go to the pub or I go to the tavern and I see them at the game or whatever, it's the cult of personality has completely engulfed them. I've taken the position that character matters more than policy for me at this point, and I don't give a pass anymore. I'm done. Yeah, after 3 elections, you said enough.
Right.
You are a Southsider, and I know for a fact you have friends that are Republicans. You probably have friends that are MAGA, maybe Freedom Caucus. I do, right? I have a hard time wrapping my head around the personal side and making it non-toxic. How do you approach it? Because you've lived a long life, no offense, but you've seen the swings in political trade winds. I've never seen this. You've never seen this. How are you dealing with people that are in your community, in your parish, neighbors, etc., that are part of that cult of personality?
Yeah, even family members that I love. So
yeah.
So when I could tell you this is exactly how our family dealt with it. When Donald Trump first won, something that I had assured my young adult daughters, there is no way he will win. When real Republican voters come out to their primary, he'll finish, 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever. So I couldn't have been more wrong. And maybe other people felt the same way. I just felt like no one who is a playboy, quasi billionaire jerk from Manhattan,
Bankruptcy king.
is going draft dodger. I can go on and on. Is going to strike a chord with working people from Granite City or South City or Crawford County, Steelville, Missouri. Yet he did. And our family, like a lot of families, we were going to have some terrible breakups and, multi-generational people that love each other. And so I remember, and I give a lot of credit to my wife, that the first or second Thanksgiving after Trump was in, she had said, there's no cell phones allowed, and we're not going to allow one word spoken about politics. We're going to get back to family, faith, sharing time with each other. And that has worked in our family. And both parties have had to give, the never Trumpers like myself and the MAGA members. You said, my love for you, our love as a family, the importance of our community where we live right now is more important than anything that happens at the presidential level.
Let me dig into that just a little bit. You mentioned you had daughters. How many daughters?
4.
Like, I run this scenario through those that have been in my circles that are Trump supporters and just simply ask them, okay, whether you have a wife or daughters, right? But more simplistically, like if you just had a kid, would you ever allow your kid to have a teacher that spoke like that, a sport coach, a baseball coach, soccer coach that spoke like that, did those things, a mentor, a Cub Scout leader, et cetera? Would you ever allow an individual with explicit character out on the billboard that has said those things, done those things, oversee anything to do with your children? And if the answer is no, how can you justify be the father of our country?
I would say the answer to that is never, no. And I am hopeful that this is an aberration around one, and I could be wrong on this, around one cult of personality, that uniquely this guy came up at a time and somehow he hit a chord that was simmering deep down. And I don't want to blame my political party too much, but how on earth the Democrats have lost the battle of the working man is shocking to me. I mean, we do defend working people, but we've lost the battle.
In true pendulum style, I'll go there.
Okay.
Because have you read the book Abundance? Have you read it yet?
I have not.
The Ezra Klein and Thompson. Read it.
Okay.
They wrote it, I think they wrote it during and right at the Harris loss, the 24 election. And it was kind of an introspective look into the Democratic Party and specifically looking at some policies and mindset that actually put in motion baked in failures for the party. So, for example, California, they talk about California a lot. It's the compare and contrast of California and Texas. Housing. You go and you want to save the environment, you want to save the trees, you want to do all these things and protect the homeowner and make the house, CO2 safe and all this, all this regulation to the point where you have so much regulation, it makes it cost prohibitive to the point of impossible to build new houses. And if you want to manage affordable housing, you have to have inventory. So, for example, I think for every 100,000 people in California, this is within the book. And I'm going to get this wrong exactly, but the ratio is close. For every 100,000, you would see 4 new houses. Texas, for every 100,000, you would see 22, right? And so the premise of the book was really simple. In chasing down this perfect, this ideal, this theory of what's good for the environment, what's good for the poor person, what's good for the homeowner, all these things, we created a regulatory environment in which now we can't actually help the people we want. That's what I think has happened within the Democratic Party with the working class. They've chased a lot of theoretical ideas or concepts or premises, policies, but they are not good at getting them across the finish line. Take your pick. How do you feel that at all? Do you see, because I do, being a registered, I'm not even registered. I am an independent. I am not registered Democrat. I've voted for both, predominantly Democrat since 92. But if someone were to ask me, what's the Democrats' greatest success from a policy standpoint? What is it? How do we define that?
Yeah. So how would we define it?
That's a lot, by the way.
That is. I'd say if I had to say, defining that, certainly at least we've moved the ability. It's becoming less affordable right now because of subsidy cuts, but we've expanded the affordability and at least the availability of health insurance coverage. A big, big issue that certainly every other developed nation on the planet figured out, and we're still struggling to figure it out because Anyway, there's the best example I can give in most recent times.
Well, because those of us that are wonks, that are in the weeds of this stuff, what we know to be true is that the Obama ACA was really a Republican light plan. It was a toe in the water. It was the public market. It was not a true entrant into the single payer realm, right? It was like, wow, we kind of need to protect them too. And by doing that, the sheer nature of how insurance works, as you well know, and I know pretty well, that's not how it works.
No, but it did increase at least portability, which was such a big issue that we could have fixed many years ago. It was crazy to think that if you're on a group plan and you have a child with disabilities and you wanted to become an entrepreneur and get your own individual policy, you couldn't leave the group plan because of that. But you were the same insured. It just made no sense to me. So that was an easy one to solve.
Portability and pre-existing conditions.
Yeah, they were, to me, they were big, and at least we addressed it partially. I think it still comes down to, and Missouri is not, we can't make the comparison of California and Texas. I don't think either states compare well with what we have in Missouri.
Correct.
I do think Kentucky and Indiana and Illinois and other truly Midwestern states do. And we're even losing the battle there in terms of, population and economic growth. And we're an aging, we're in this demographic, this Professor Russ Sandoval, I think is his name, from St. Louis U.
I've had him on this show. Yeah.
He writes fascinating stuff. And I mean, he's, even for us right here, he's got that thing about, the city of St. Louis, and in particular, deaths outpacing births and exoduses outpacing, people moving in. That is just a death knell. And when you expand that out a little bit bigger, St. Louis County is starting to have its first, they've leveled off and now actually coming down just a percentage point or two. And Missouri itself, though growing, is not growing as fast as the national average. So you can't build when you can't attract people to live where you need them to live.
So I have a theory on that, because I think that, when you talk about population growth, a lot of the people that want to, make the argument or put out a statement or a theory as to what's going on in Missouri is, we need to bring more people in. We need to bring more people in, and it's tax cuts, or it's, easier to build, or whatever it is. And I feel like, how many times do we hear somebody say, "How do we just keep our kids? How do we?" Because you have 4 kids.
I have 6 kids.
Oh, sorry.
You asked how many daughters I had.
Anyway, I should have known. You're Southside Catholic. I have 3 boys from 21 down to 13, and the thing is simple. My oldest is in Nashville, as I mentioned earlier. Mm-hmm. My middle, he's going to be at Vermont. I already know they're not coming back. And it's not because they don't have opportunity. It's not because they don't have infrastructure or assets, be it human or otherwise. They could do it, but because their mindset, we travel a lot, they know a lot of people in a lot of other places, and they're pretty kind of in tune with what's going on. It doesn't matter what they do with like a state income tax or other. They don't have an interest in staying in the region for this optical, this cultural, this vibe level. And it seems to me like we need to, the call is coming from inside the house, right? How would you, as a senator, a state senator, how do you address just keeping our own people here?
You know, we had a nice debate about this just the other night with a bunch of friends, and they were saying, and I kind of do think this is the case, everyone I know, both in my family and even anecdotally beyond that scope, everybody that went away to college, two things happened. They met someone they wanted to be with and or, marry at some point after college, and they got job offers from multiple locations. And the job offers at St. Louis at that level did not compete with the job offers that were in Denver and Chicago, to pick two cities that I know several kids have taken better jobs. At one time, St. Louis, as you know, was a headquarters type city. That brings a lot of brass infrastructure in, and we're no longer that. Bill McClellan, who's a St. Louis treasurer through and through, how he says, we're the branch office town now. Well, I think we need to emphasize that we're an entrepreneurial startup, which we are. We need to emphasize our life sciences, which we do, our arts, and sell the story. And I think you might find that your kids, that St. Louis has a lot to offer at 23, 4, 5, 6, but maybe around 30, when the first of the kids start arriving, they might say, St. Louis is affordable, good career opportunities, and that has to keep building, and is a city that has, this is what I love about St. Louis, we have, in my opinion, all the cool stuff that Chicago and New York has to offer, yet it's affordable and you can get around. And I just think those are important. Maybe they're important to me because I'm older now. I don't know.
No,
You could buy a house here.
Affordability. See, because I have this debate with locals that hate the word cheap, right, from a branding exercise. Yeah. And cheap is relative, because what we're talking about, because I lived in Chicago for 8 years. If you're anywhere near the north side, northwest side of Chicago, you're in the city. If you're in a comparable, Tower Grove is, Lakeview, right? That 1,000 square foot, 2-bed, 1-bath apartment here is going to be running in the $1,500, $1,400 range in Tower Grove. I mean, that's almost $600 more than it was 15 years ago. Chicago, add another 1,000 to it,
for
right?
Sure. New York, add another 1,000 to that.
But what's happening is college grads in particular, because the numbers don't lie. The statistics as far as like political affiliation or ideologically speaking, if you're a college grad in America, you're 62 to 64% of them are going to lean left. Mm-hmm. And so when they do look at their options, yes, they're looking at packages. But what you'll find is when you peel the onion back a little bit, they're looking for the ability to live experiences. They're looking for, I'll take a little bit less money for more time off. I'll take a little bit less money for more remote work, whatever it is. And then when you start to add on their political ideology, we have national headlines on a weekly basis that involve and Eric Schmidt or Josh Hawley, that these kids are now, who used to be politically ambivalent, they're not, because it's now headline news every single day. Because I'm hearing that on the ground from the kids without me being me, I just listening. They're aware. So how do we address that?
So my kids who've stayed in the city of St. Louis would say the opposite. That's why they're in the city of St. Louis.
Be the change.
They are being the change, and they're like, no, we're going to make St. Louis the best it can be and have the most opportunity, the most freedoms for people, and they want to be part of that. I do have our oldest son lives out in Long Beach. He teaches at Cal State Long Beach, and they're for all the reasons you just said, they are not coming back to Missouri. They might come back to the city of St. Louis. They're not coming back to Missouri.
So wouldn't step one be kind of a hyper focus on kids like yours, kids like mine? This idea that Missouri needs to bring in population. We need to actually turn the bleeding off first.
Oh yeah, for sure. I would always say that's the first step. I mean, thank God for everybody that stays in the inner core. And if we can't, if you were raised in an area that you love and that your kids had a great experience, and if they just say, I don't think they're going to say, I'm absolutely never going to live in the city of St. Louis. I don't believe that for a second. And I just think that's why St. Louis is poised right now to have that renaissance. You know, we have a chance to turn around downtown. We have a chance to reimagine the north side because of the tornado. We have a better group of leadership now. I mean, I pick on Gabe Gore and Kara Spencer and others, that I just think that there is people are looking at the city right now saying, it's got a chance. It may be its last chance. I don't know. I don't want to be overly optimistic, but I am high on this city and this region.
Look at Detroit.
Look at Detroit. It worked out. It really worked out. Now they had to go bankrupt to get there, and you know they had.
I didn't say that. I just said look at Detroit.
We don't need to go down that far to turn it around.
All right, here's what we're going to do. We'll take a quick break. I'm going to get a water bottle here. My coffee's gone, so I need a little water. When we come back, what I'd like to talk to you about is I want to pull out a couple of policy focuses within your campaign. I want to talk about a little bit of the kind of the specifically. I want to get into St. Louis on another parallel, and then talk about these amendments that are coming down the pipe and what they kind of the effect that they might have on all of us here in the state. Sound good to you?
Sounds good. Thanks.
All right, be right back. All right, we're back. Quick water break. As I stated before the break, wanted to shift gears a little bit. Let's get into your campaign. I browsed the page, went straight to the policies, kind of, and it looks like you have six areas that you're focusing on. I don't want to talk about all of them because we could be here for hours. Just kind of want to get a high level, an opportunity for you to touch on these policy items for somebody that's got a short attention span, potential. We'll cut these into clips. Consider them future clips for the TikTok world. The 6 items. The first one, top left, that's on your page, is quality education.
Yep.
I'm just going to leave the door open there. What does that mean? What is quality education as a policy focus? What does that mean to you?
I believe, and I think most people would agree with me, that the best chance of the next generation and our current generation of students to succeed in life and to be trained for the jobs of today and the future come down to every kid, regardless of their parents' ability to supplement or fully fund their education, whether they are in a parochial school, a private school, a public school, that they have to have, we as a society have to say that this is one of the ultimate goods that we can do for the next generation. I just believe in it so strongly that education is the great and has been the great equalizer for many, many people to be able to support a family, to have a meaningful career. We're in a time of change right now with AI and change is inevitable. You and I have been through a couple of big changes in our lifetimes. That's only going to accelerate. The rate of change is only accelerating. And every kid, and when you have a group of students, and I'll say, whether they're in St. Louis City, and you just have this large percentage that can't read at grade level, can't do basic math, these kids are, I don't want to say anybody is doomed, but boy, it's like having their 2 hands tied behind their back, and they're only they're 12 years old or whatever. So we, at a time of slightly tightening budgets at the state level, cut funding to education. It's almost always, whether it's higher ed or regular, and I'm like, it would be the absolute last thing that I would ever suggest a cut to.
Yeah, the numbers are out there. We all know it. We see it on a daily, especially on socials. Missouri's 49th in teacher pay. Just start and stop there.
Yeah.
That's an awful number. And I want to get into just your position on school choice and how that's playing out in the state of Missouri. I know there are votes historically in which you were on the side of the school choice debate. True that up as far as, like, for example, me. Let me just anecdotally. 3 kids. I live in Webster. It's a great school district. We chose, our oldest was kind of poised. We chose for SLU High for him. Middle and youngest have been, private when they were younger. Now they're public. High school, like, all the experiences were great. Me personally, I had the choice and I had the means. School choice in the states that we've been compared to, Arizona is the famous one in which it's just not working. Missouri, you have, I forgot the percentage of districts, 25% of districts are now down to 4 days a week. It's like all of these things manipulating with the system. Where's the metrics? How does that help the situation when, it's SLU High is $22,000 a year. The school choice voucher is not going to get a kid there.
No. And so how do you define school choice? I'll say as a city resident, we have a charter school option and have had for 25 years. We have the traditional SLPS model. Inside of that, we have magnet schools. And inside of that, we have the very gifted program. Metro High
Metro
School.
High.
And if your kid is fortunate enough to be in that track, I mean, it's the greatest education experience your kid can have in St. Louis. It's wonderful. A lot of kids don't make it into that track. And you had just said yourself, originally from Granite City, well, I presume you could have raised your family in Granite City, but came back to St. Louis, you choose Webster. I'm just guessing, we don't know each other well enough to say, I'm guessing the school district in Webster was part of the reason why you moved to Webster.
Yeah, I grew up a public school kid. So for me, when my wife said, we have a child and I'm done carrying him up 2 flights of stairs in the city,
Yeah.
So which was really the impetus. School district was, I wouldn't say it was front of mind. I would say it was maybe B or C on the list.
I would say for a lot of city residents, and I mean, I've been one my entire life, where did those 450,000 people go over the past 50 years? They went to St. Louis and St. Charles counties. The vast majority of them went for 2 reasons.
Yep.
Everybody says crime. I'm like, no, I think it's school districts was before crime even. And, pick Lindbergh, Parkway, Clayton, Brentwood, Webster.
Would you agree? I mean, you grew up here, and I know enough to know as well. White flight.
White flight, certainly. Certainly back in the 60s and 70s,
Yeah.
but no longer true. Now, I don't believe that 100%. That professor we referenced prior would talk about black flight from the city of St. Louis.
Totally.
I'm just saying that parents like ourselves and yourself and many others did have choice for their kids' school, whether it was to pay tuition because they could afford it. The Mo Scholars program that you're referencing was never going to send a kid to SLU. I don't statistically know anybody at SLU involved with Mo Scholars.
Well, but that's the whole Elon Musk caught on tape moment. When they were talking about Texas when they implemented the school choice and the vouchers, et cetera. There was no limitation in so much that the legislator was simply asked that was sponsoring the bill, would Elon Musk qualify for a credit for his kids to go? And the answer was yes, right? And that's what the people that live for me, right? Paying my taxes within Webster Groves, I know because as a real estate guy as well, I understand the value of the public school system. That is a buoy to your housing value.
For sure it is.
To your community. And so if you do start to shift dollars through these credits to this diaspora of children that go to St. Joe, to SLU High, to Vianney, CBC, et cetera, you are exporting tax dollars out of your district.
So when we went with direct general revenue, partially funding this Mo Scholars program was $50 million, and then in a time of budget cuts, just to pour salt in a wound to increase that by another $10 million, I I was against that. I spoke against that. I continue to speak against that. I just think that is wrong, number one, and tone deaf, number two. That was not the original plan, and I think enough donations didn't come in to create the tax credits that were going to be the funding mechanism for this. Every school you mentioned there, the one that I'm most familiar with, you did not mention that, St. Mary's High School. I know that
Southside.
So yeah, Southside, but St. Mary's uniquely serves a truly working class and many times struggling folks. Most of the kids that go to St. Mary's, the young men that go there, and Mike England's doing a great job there. They're from Dutchtown and Bevo and the near South Side, and there are a few dozen kids, I don't know numerically how many, that are using the Mo Scholars program to pay their tuition at St. Mary's, and St. Mary's is able to make that work for them. That is their tuition, the $6,700. So I always think it's Chaminade, St. Joe's, that's what everybody pops up in slew people's minds. What pops up in my mind is Ritter and St. Mary's.
Yeah, no, I understand, and I think that's a great thing for those schools. When you look at the pool and you look at the pie of the money, there are a load, is my official scientific answer, of families that are using it that don't need it. And that's the knock on it. I get it. It's not a perfect solution. I don't think we have. None have been presented. But let's move on to one of really a hot topic item, that is police state control.
Yep.
Crime is something within your campaign, crime reduction, increased police force. This is a key component of your race.
For sure it is.
Just take a second and speak to that from a 10,000-foot view, and let's get into state control a little bit.
When you have the vast majority of police officers that belong to both the POA, the union negotiating arm of the police, and the Ethical Society of Police, over multiple years, this was their number one priority to reinstitute a police board of commissioners to run the police department. There's a tiny defund the police, and I hope shrinking every last, next year and beyond. Most people in the city of St. Louis know that we are understaffed and response times are much too long. The cops are overworked, underpaid, and there's no other union negotiated position where that would be tolerable for a steel worker or a carpenter or an electrician, pipe fitter, et cetera. Somehow there's this disconnect that this is not a labor negotiation, which it most certainly is. The morale inside the police department when we voted for this, and there was several Democrats that voted for this, and a couple in the city of St. Louis, Dick Kimball and myself, I know in particular, saying this wasn't going to change crime statistics. That really was not the point. The point was to improve the morale, improve the pay so that they could recruit and retain officers, because we endlessly hear this loop that we're 200 and 300 officers short, which we are, and each one of those officers that you might be friends with and I'm friends with, when we're at neighborhood meetings and that officer is at that meeting, I ask everybody, look at this officer. We have underpaid this man or woman $10,000 to $15,000 every year they have served us. Which of us could take a $10,000 to $15,000 annual pay cut and not move to Brentwood and work or Clayton and work? It's something that we have to address. And when everybody agrees and they don't want to come up with any other solution to make it work, this to me was a chance to make it work. Now, the rollout has been a bit of a shit show. There's no doubt about it. It hasn't gone.
Is that your professional opinion?
Yeah, that is my professional opinion. And
doesn't this kind of circle back to a little bit of where we started, city, county, et cetera? This is a perfect example. When you look at scale, you look at economies of scale, you look at efficiencies, you look at best practices, right? Maryland Heights, Town and Country, if my memory serves correct, I think the average salary for a cop is around $85K.
Okay.
City of St. Louis, you know it, I know it, it's 60.
They start at 60, and after 20 years, you're at 78,000.
Yeah. So, and realistically, scope of work, if you're talking about the heavy lift as a first responder, specifically a cop, I don't think anybody can deny that if you are in the city of St. Louis and you're working in, District 3 or whatever the district is, you're doing a heavier lift.
Much more.
So there's that. But then there's the whole, if we believe in democracy, if we believe in representation, how do you true up a city that is the blue dot in the red state, a city that is regularly left out of the fight from Jeff City when it comes to helping out with FEMA, with other things, with teacher funding, et cetera? How do you true up supporting state control over the city force whenever the people in the city of St. Louis are vehemently, ideologically, you put it to a vote, it fails. True that up for me.
As I said first, to support the police, that was fundamental. I think that it's lost in translation, and I think this is an important part. And it's an important part of this race as the only city resident in this race. When the governor appoints, the approval process, the confirmation process, comes through the Senate. In particular, it comes through the 2 senators from the city of St. Louis. So there are city elected officials that sit in judgment of approving or not approving these picks. Maggie Nurnberg in Kansas City pushed back against one of the appointees, and she's just in her second year in the Senate, and Governor Kehoe had to back down and put somebody else in. That kind of vetting process. It didn't happen in this first round, but I make the promise to the constituents and absolutely future appointees, and they're starting to roll off starting next year because it's this rolling process. They're going to be properly vetted and bring an area of expertise as city citizens, as I'm sure you realize they have to be. And I've got to believe we've got to have a mutual cooperation between the members on that board and the mayor. I mean, she needs to be the first among equals on that board, and that's not happening now.
Yeah, it's. I think you summarized it properly. Like, it's a shit show.
Yeah.
I mean, in my professional opinion, that would be page 1, shit show. Page 2, then we figure it out. Where do you see the role or responsibility when it comes to crime? In so much that maybe we've lost focus of the issue. And where I'm going with this is, it's one thing to be short cops. It's another thing to be short cops because we're constantly putting criminals or potential criminals back on the street because our courts are not, clearing dockets and being more intentional with the decisions that are made for repeat offenders. Where do you see the court's role in this issue? Because it's easy to support the cops as a block because that's just being patriotic in most circles.
Right.
But you and I both know that the system is a circle. It is a hamster wheel, and at the top end of it is the court, and at the bottom is the people that are going to chase the bad guys.
Well, if we would have had any more years of Kim Gardner, I don't know where we would be, but I'm going to say that once Gabe Gore took over as circuit attorney, built back that staff. If you hear Gabe speak about how he has rebuilt back the professionalism in that office, recruited and retained prosecutors, Mary Pat Carl, and others came back who love the city, live in the city, want to work in the city. That's been a huge, huge step forward. The 22nd Judicial Court, I'm going to take a little bit of exception with the way you painted it. It is, they are getting through as many cases as they can. They go to trial. We are moving cases through. Proper evidence is being brought, and good convictions are happening. People are being taken off the street. That cycle that was existing, where you were arrested and we couldn't get, the warrant done, and people were not taken off the street, were just back out. Just think of what they're doing with the curfew with the teenage kids. I mean, certainly this Chief Tracy, who I believe in, is certainly taking another step, even with that, because you got to address teen delinquency.
Yeah, no, I don't want to imply that they're not doing their job. I view it as very similar to the national argument when it comes to immigration. We want immigration reform, and we want a closed border. But then we want immigration reform, and in order to do that, that means you need more courts. You need to clear these cases quicker. These people that are doing it the right way are falling into this grinder, this ice grinder, so to speak, because the system is not moving fast enough, right? I think the compare and contrast, that's what we see here. Now, there was, under Gardner, a clear kind of ideological tilt in so much that we're going to ignore the things that people are doing and call it everybody else's fault or the community's fault. And therefore, we're going to put them back out there, especially the kids. And I say kids loosely. It was an ideological shift.
It was. Couple that with Missouri's crazy rules about lack of any type of gun regulation, that you can't get past even to first base to start addressing it at the state level. It hit as a perfect storm.
Isn't that the ultimate irony? Here we are, as again, we are a MAGA red state at this point. This 2A is tattooed on most, within the state. And yet one of the key issues within the city of St. Louis is gun violence.
Yeah.
There's no concerted effort. Like the solution to it is like, let's lock more people up. That's not root cause.
No.
That's that's the bluegill on a nightcrawler. That's the easy part.
I'm hopeful that we're getting. So I've continuously filed a couple of just gun regulation bills, and the one that got the tiniest amount of traction, and I hope to build upon that in the Senate, and that is addressing what happened at the CVPA shooting. That if you know that your loved one who lives in your home is having a mental health crisis, and there is a weapon that you don't want in your home, that there is a legal way for the police to remove the weapon from the home, something that wasn't able to happen with the CVPA shooter and his mother, and we saw that tragedy play out on TV. So we're getting there. I have this 180 cooling off day period in the bill that I presented, and at least I got a little debate with some of the Republicans that are against any type of gun control, saying, well, it's not a bad idea. I don't like the 180 days. I'm like, fine, let's make it 60. It has to be something.
Yeah.
And so that part can be negotiable. But the point is saying that there has to be a legal way for someone that lives in your home who's experiencing that type of crisis, for their parent, for their loved one, for their guardian to be able to remove that gun with help of law enforcement is just mission critical.
Okay, let's close out with two other items real quick, and that is, as I mentioned earlier, amendments 4 and 5. I'm a hard no on both. Full transparency. That was really simple. Which one would you like to discuss first?
Let's go with 5 first. I am also a hard no on both.
5. So for the listener, Amendment 5 is, simply put, it's a process that if this passes, it's a way for the Missouri legislature to eliminate over time the state income tax.
Correct.
Which is roughly 4.5%, 4%, whatever, if you pay it, which all of the mathematicians and economists, including on the Republican side, have said will equate to roughly 60 to 65%, depending on whose numbers, of the state budget. Why is eliminating the state income tax a bad idea, in your opinion?
I'd start with, philosophically, for me, the fairest tax, and there are basically three types of taxes, right? Sales taxes, property taxes, income taxes. The fairest to me is income taxes, and always have been.
Yeah.
When you have a good year, you pay more. When you have a bad year, you pay less. That's not true of your property tax. You know, you have a good year, you pay the same. You have a bad year, you pay the same. Sales tax you have to pay on stuff, especially in Missouri where you tax food. So the reason why I say it, so you did, it's 4.7% is the top marginal rate right now. When I was 8 years ago, first in the House, they were popping champagne corks because it was 6. They've had a couple triggers, got it down. We had a couple of good budget years. They accelerated the cuts by 0.3 of a percentage point up to 0.5 of a percentage point. That this was going to bring, now that we were at 4.8%, people and businesses and entrepreneurs were going to come flooding into Missouri. And I'm like, no, they're not. I just don't believe. Now, you could have too high of a tax rate, clearly, where people would avoid your city, your state, your whatever. But to say when you're in the middle of the pack to the slightly lower total tax burden, which is where we are in Missouri, and we have had this experiment over 8 years.
Yeah.
And it has not moved the needle. So what makes you think lowering it for 4.7 and getting it down to 4.2 is going to somehow accelerate it? Lots of people, I think, equate income taxes with the feds. I think maybe just on income taxes, they add those two numbers together, and they're thinking that that's their state income tax. I've done a lot of tax returns when you actually show people in that $150,000 married filing joint or below, your state income tax burden is the least of your burdens.
Correct.
Your property tax is substantial many times, and certainly sales tax is a burden on those that can least afford to pay it.
Well, that's where this whole thing, you know, this is where proponents or opponents, I should say, like, this is really simple. You take that $150,000 house, go up to $250,000 house, combined joint income.
Right.
You got 2.2 kids, you got 2 dogs, you know your kids are in 1.5 sports apiece. You know, you break out all the averages. Here's the reality of it. It's the consistent cost of living, specifically via fuel, food, and services.
Correct.
That you are going to spend no matter what, because those little things, they eat a lot, right? And we're already seeing natural inflation as it pertains to commodity goods, grains, food, bread, meat, etc. You start to take now, going back to the beginning of this particular portion of the conversation, 60% of the state's budget is derived from that income tax. Where are you going to make it up?
You're going to expand the base and increase the rate.
Right. And now, from the services standpoint, that's the one that scares me. When you think about real estate transactions, when you think about healthcare transactions, when you think about just services outside of food and things.
That's right.
That will crush people.
When you pay for labor, it's all of those things. And the people that would benefit the most are the really high income earners with family incomes greater than 400 or 450,000.
Correct.
I just have felt like this was a fool's errand that nobody really was requesting for. I could tell you, for a lot of years I've been involved, whether it's business, professionally, or whatever, Missouri's marginal income tax rate has never come up as that issue. Where we did have, Democrats pushed hard for, and if we wanted to cut taxes anywhere, back when the budget was more robust, to eliminate sales tax on food, to me was the single best thing. It benefited every single person, and most especially benefited poorer people.
We have the perfect example of how and where, and you know the mechanism where when you keep sales taxes and service taxes low, look at gas. I remember as a kid where we would, on Saturdays, it would be a freaking family trip to cross the McKinley Bridge to go get a malt from Crown Candy to share it, because my dad needed to fill up at that Amoco station for 30, 40, 50 cents less.
Yeah. So, okay, perfect example. And that's still true. If you go to the JB Bridge today, there's all kinds of license plates lining up there.
So like this, we are going to hurt those that don't have inflationary protection or income protection, because they can't not buy gas. They can't not buy food. They can't not go to the doctor's office.
Correct. What they spend their money on, to your point, will continue. It's not like they can adjust. There are no adjustments that can be made when you're spending every dollar to try to make ends meet.
And you have 6 kids. I have 3. In this, and we're going to close on this. You going to zero income tax in Missouri, as things stand, you are not attracting new young people. That's not a ticket to ride that they're going to go there. Because these guys in Jeff City on the Republican side that are backing this, they were like, well, look at Tennessee. Well, let's look at Tennessee.
Yeah.
Nashville is not St. Louis. Nashville is not Kansas City. Nashville is definitely not Jeff City.
Nope.
It is a tourist capital. And then you have the mountains, and you have all these other things. And, oh, by the way, it just came out in, I think, Forbes 2 days ago. Nashville is now 50th out of 50 in quality of life living for young college grads. Why? They can't afford it.
This is what I know about. I'll say it. So I'm more the accountant guy, and I make this argument on the floor all the time. Missouri's sales tax right now is 4.225. Tennessee's is 7.75. The state portion. When you give that speech and you talk about it at a local town hall, everybody's like, no, I'm from St. Louis. Our sales tax rate is 10% because that's about what we pay on everything.
You had your local.
Correct. But the rest is all local. And I'm like, to your point, tourism, okay, I'm going to go with that. And it's a state that has not used income tax to fund their general revenue historically.
Correct.
So, and I'm not saying if this would have been changed, 100 years ago, we would be having a different conversation.
Well, you know what they did too? They were the last state to do this. You know what the big thing they did? City-county merger.
They did do that.
Oh,
they did do that. You're right.
Full circle.
Yeah, you're right. Full circle. Touche. Good point.
All right. On that note, Steve Butz, I really appreciate you coming in, man.
Thank you.
This has been fun.
Awesome studio too.
I appreciate that. Good luck with the race.
Thank you.
Keep me posted. Depending, if you come out on the positive side of this thing, hit me back. Let's get closer to the election because we're in Missouri. The headlines change by the hour. I'm sure there'll be more to talk about. We will not revisit the hot salami versus the extra special debate anymore. But good luck with your race.
Thank you. I really appreciate you having me on. It's really been fun and informative.
Thank you. Tell me you're joking. We are out of here. I will have a link to Steve's page in the show notes. Like, review, follow, share. Until next time. And then, by the way, quick shout out, Nick Kimball. Thanks for the intro. This was a fun one. Owe you a cold pop there, buddy. Until next time, JB here. See ya.